Hello, you're listening to Angel Nears, the podcast. Angel Nears is a Silicon Valley community for startup builders where founders and operators share their firsthand knowledge on how to build and scale startups. I'm your host, Oleg Kujakov, and our guest today is Punit Soni, the founder and CEO of Suki, a virtual medical assistant that acts as a voice user interface for EHR's electronic health records, which enables a doctor to write their clinical notes, enter orders, view information, and exchange data with other providers dramatically more efficiently. I'm excited to bring Punit onto the show to talk about reimagining the healthcare tech stack, making it invisible and assistive by delivering incredibly fast and accurate voice experiences using the latest NLP and ML. But before we get into all of that, Punit, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to get to know you a little bit and find out what Suki's all about. So let's get started with you. You're the founder and CEO. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you even got started as an entrepreneur.
Sure. I was, my background, I'm an electrical engineer by training. And, in the early days of my career, I was working on electronic design automation and a bunch of engineering jobs. And then ended up actually doing a little bit of venture capital, which I can safely say, A, I was not good at it at that point, and B, I hated. And then I decided to go to Google and was there for almost 8-9 years as a product manager in the search team, and then later on when we were building mobile apps, then as the product lead for all of our mobile apps, and then games and social, and when we acquired Motorola, then actually running software for them. Before I started Suki, I went to India, where I was the chief product officer of India's largest e-commerce company, and then I kicked off Suki. And so the running joke around here is that I've done electronic design automation, shift work. I've done mobile apps. I've done search. I've done social networking, e-commerce, games, mobile phones. I guess it's only logical that I'm doing healthcare now. So that's a little bit of my background and a synopsis of my story.
Yeah, it probably would have just been easier to ask what you haven't been working on. Talk about what major global problem in healthcare, in the healthcare industry that Suki's trying to solve. Just give us your elevator pitch.
Yeah, I mean, God, the entire healthcare ecosystem is basically a collection of major global problems right now. The biggest public health crisis that very few people talk about in the country right now is the absolute burnout that's happening to clinicians, doctors, MAs, PAs, nurses, etc. And it's only getting worse and worse. By some account, I think there was a Stanford study that said that almost 88% of all doctors don't recommend their own profession to their kids anymore. You have doctors who are spending 2 to 3 hours a day, doing administrative work, checking boxes, filling forms, and rather than doing clinical work, which is what they're trained for. So we have a situation where we have taken like a very professional, probably one of the most professionally savvy group in the country, and we have converted them into glorified data clerks. And now when that happens, first of all, they burn out. Then they leave. If they leave, then, in general, the healthcare ecosystem becomes more lopsided. Patient care slips. If you are supposed to do 40 patient encounters a day and write 41-page notes every single day, then you're probably not going to be able to capture all the real right things anyway. So it's a little bit of like garbage in, garbage out. And then, then health systems say, oh, let's spend money to actually fix the problem. And you spend billions of dollars on something that actually has nothing to do with actual clinical care, unless you actually have the right data so that the continuity of care can happen. And so it's a little bit of a mess. And when we started the company, the thesis was One, it looks like the technology has not really done a good job of serving healthcare. B or two, it looked like um, the next generation of user interfaces. Like mobile was another generation of user interaction model that started in 2005, 2006, and grew from there. The next generation of UI is going to be voice. So then, if you put those two trends together, the unbelievable administrative burden and on doctors, and combine that with the fact that voice is becoming another user interface for the world, there was an opportunity to use this technology to make healthcare tech assistive and invisible, so that clinicians can focus on what they do best and love doing, which is taking care of patients. And so that was a little bit of the thesis behind the company called Suki that we started.
Let's keep talking just about how AI-driven healthcare technology can have potential to deliver higher quality care in a lower cost, more accessible manner. Can you talk about that? How does Suki do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, AI is a much maligned technology. Everybody thinks they're doing AI these days. A dog walking app in Silicon Valley has AI in it. The easiest way to like say you have made a company is you just basically say you're using AI. AI is like a very broad term. What does it even really mean if you think about the things that the problems that are there? A majority of cases when people talk about AI, they're actually just talking about glorified if then else or algorithms, and with humans behind them tagging data. AI, true AI, and especially where it comes to places like voice, is some collection of natural language parsing technology, speech recognition technology, the ability to use deep learning algorithms to make these much more savvier, and figuring out patterns and then learn and self-learning so that you can actually make a much better, more intuitive user interaction model for the end user. Where it comes to the use of AI in a company like Suki, we basically have an underlying speech platform. The speech platform uses speech recognition technology so that you can convert what people are saying into words. You have an underlying natural language parsing platform that can basically take the words that are created out of the speech recognition system and make meaning for it, understand what they really mean. And then you have an intent extractor, which basically takes those collections of words which have meaning and understand what the intent is. When you say, "Hey Suki, what was my day like?" It has to understand that voice, it has to convert it to words, then it has to make sense of what those words mean, and then it has to match it to an intent. The intent is the assistant should actually show you what your schedule looks like. And so all of these underlying technologies can be built and are built using classical learning models and algorithms that basically sit under it. For this, you need a lot of data. And the good news is that, first of all, doctors actually do a lot of things basically repeatedly. And so there's only like 19, 20 workflows that basically keep being repeated all the time. Second, the act of using Suki creates a clinical note, which documents the encounter. And clinical note is where all data in healthcare is hidden. So the act of using Suki creates the data that can actually teach Suki to be better. And so what we have is a really nice virtuous cycle of data creation, product getting better, more adoption happening, hence more data getting created, product getting even better, and so on and so forth. And so that's basically a little bit of a peek under the hood for what powers the Suki digital assistant.
Yeah. So that all sounds like a great vision. Can you tell me what the market is like today? Like, I believe that all these tools can be built, but what are doctors using today? And talk about what technology looks like in a doctor's office today.
Yeah, if you step back and you think about the vision of Suki, broadly, it was to make healthcare tech assistive and invisible. Now, healthcare tech can be a lot of different things. But we said make healthcare tech assistive and invisible so doctors can, which means that we are targeting providers, actual doctors, MAs, PAs, nurses. So then the question is, what technology does doctor a doctor use. Today, a majority of the work they do is to interact with the electronic medical record system. And in that electronic medical record, the system, the majority of the work, 30-40% of the work they do is in documenting a clinical encounter. Then they spend time actually, putting in orders. Then they spend time managing inboxes. They spend time actually extracting codes out of it so that effectively they can get paid. They can spend time querying it, asking it, for information on what is the vital signs of this patient, or what allergies does this patient have, or what medications are they taking. They spend time clicking and checking boxes. Now, if you're going to make healthcare tech assistive and invisible, then you want all these use cases to become easy and seamless. And so that was in many ways the genesis of why we were doing Suki. Now, what are they doing before when Suki existed? Well, first of all, they were actually directly using the EMR, typing in notes, clicking boxes, checking things. And as you can imagine, that's the most expensive scribe you can ever create, because you've basically taken a really expensive resource and put them to task to do mundane work. And then there was a time when there's a lot of doctors use dictation apps. So you click somewhere, you talk. You click somewhere else, you talk, and it will convert what you said into words. That's actually interesting. It actually speeds up a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, dictation is just a technology. It's speech recognition. A digital assistant like Siri or Alexa or Cortana or Suki is basically a product. It doesn't just convert word audio to text. It actually understands what you say and does something with it. And then there are other technologies like transcription services, where you send the audio to a low cost location and some human being types the note for you. Virtual scribe systems, where a human being is basically a scribe for you from a low cost location. Actual scribes, which are people who are sitting right next to you, that cost $30,000 to $60,000 per year. These are all various things people were using to make their interaction with healthcare tech easier and let them focus on clinical care. What Suki did is basically built a voice-based digital assistant that could do a lot of these things in some meaningful way, in a completely scalable way, because there's no real human being behind the scenes, and at a cost and a price point that's much cheaper, because again, there's no human being behind the scenes, such that you could save doctors a bunch of time and make them much more efficient. And so, when we launched it, the first thing it did was start writing notes for you. But then, we added a new skill where, as you were writing the notes, it would extract codes and put them in the EMR so you could get paid for it ultimately. Then we started adding the ability for you to be able to ask it all sorts of queries like, hey, show me this information or show me that information, and it would actually do that for you. And then we realized that there's a long tail of use cases where people still want to dictate, like letters and emails and things like that. So we just added that as a free feature within the assistant. So these are all just skills, and you can add a lot of skills, and every skill's job is to reduce the doctor's work and make the healthcare tech that they interface with more assistive and invisible.
The approach with voice, it's so interesting, because we have a challenge here in healthcare tech where we have kind of a mess of technology as it is right now. Right? You kind of mentioned doctors that kind of wrangle with their EMRs, and they have to do a lot of administrative tasks, checking boxes, typing in notes. How does voice change the game and kind of, we can add technology, but actually make this interaction in the provider's office more human? Can you speak to that? Why is voice such a game changer?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't really about healthcare. Voice is going to be the next big UI. So in 04, 05, 06, we were all running around saying, mobile. And then there were some people who were saying, yeah, you have to swipe on a glass screen and that's what people are going to do. No way is that going to happen. And then cut to now, and there's just mobile. Right? Even these big laptop and big screens are becoming more and more like mobile. And it is the dominant user interaction model in the world. Now, if you think about it for a second, this idea that you're going to carry around glass slabs and swipe on that, and that's the only way you're going to actually communicate with each other, makes less sense. It is a good way. It's a private way. It has its use in many use cases and setups. But it's obvious that the most high fidelity way, a higher fidelity way in which you can communicate is voice, right? There's nuance, there is an ability to understand inflections. There is an ability to actually be able to express what you want to say. That shortcut, 6 different swipes and 4 different clicks. So the this is a continual theme, in my opinion, where user interactions or human computer interfaces keep becoming more and more high bandwidth. We were basically putting in like these paper cards at one point of time. Then we said, oh, you know what? It seems like we can type a little. Oh, you know what? I can use a mouse and click things. Oh, you know what? I can swipe on glass screens. You know what? You can talk. And so I think voice is going to be the next big UI. And in a few years, we'll look back and say, wow, people used to like type and swipe on things. Like, why couldn't I just talk to my thermostat or talk to my fridge and get it to do things, or talk to each other and have the information go? So I'll stop for a second, and that is my, get off the soapbox on why voice actually is the next big UI. Now, if voice is the next big user interaction revolution, then one place where it will be most useful is going to be, any place where it's going to be more useful is a place where there is a lot of clicks and checks. When you have to do 6 clicks and 4 checks and 5 different lines to write to do one task, then voice becomes easy, because all you have to just say it. You have to just say one sentence and it should understand it. Where does that happen a lot? It happens in healthcare. Now, the other two things that are interesting in healthcare is a very fixed ontology. Because the words are so unique, it's actually much smaller than consumer ontology of language. And so therefore, you can actually be much more precise and accurate in healthcare. Finally, doctors are used to speaking very precisely, and they're used to voice products because they've been using dictation for a long time. So now you have a product area or a sector that actually has a lot of the fundamental workflow challenges that can be shortcut by voice, with a grammar and ontology that's much more constrained, which makes it more accurate, with a user base that's used to speaking precisely and has used voice products before. It's like the holy grail. This is where voice is going to explode. So that's why voice.
Great answer. Let's move on to Suki. Tell us about the origin story. Like what insight or aha moment led to starting this company?
I can't tell you that there's some emotional reason that I decided I wanted to do something in healthcare. Nobody was sick. Nothing was happening. I kind of wanted to start a company, and I looked at a few different areas, and I felt I was at a point in my life where anything worth doing was not worth doing if it was a small gig. Better to do something where time would be an inherent advantage, and I had the time and the resources to put into it. And I wanted to make sure that there was clear societal value, and I wanted to make sure that there was a non-zero chance that this would be a one of the biggest companies of its era. And so, if you think about healthcare, it's 5 to 7% of every country in this world's GDP. It's about 20% of the US GDP, which is a mess. And in the idea that search has Google and e-commerce has Amazon and media has Netflix and social has Facebook, what does healthcare have? And how is it that we don't have a world-beating, game-changing technology company in healthcare? Yes, there are companies with like singles of billions of dollars market caps that are pure tech, but nothing that even comes close to what an Amazon or a Google or a Netflix and others have accomplished. And so I have this thesis that the greatest, most significant technology company ever built is going to be in healthcare. I don't know when that will be built. I also don't know if Suki has a shot at it. It has a non-zero chance that it could be it. But, it has a non-zero chance that it could be it. So that meant that I had a shot at fulfilling my ambition of building a a really significant company. Nobody can argue that working in healthcare cannot have social value, especially if you're actually helping doctors. And then finally, in healthcare, the natural sluggishness and friction and bureaucracy and painfulness of healthcare becomes an asset and a moat if you have the time and commitment to put into it for multiple years. And so the same thing that freaks entrepreneurs out where they don't want to do it because it's going to take them 5 years to actually get any traction becomes a moat for somebody who's actually willing to give it decades. And so all those reasons is why I decided to do healthcare. Now, a slightly long-winded answer, but I think that part of the story is as important as why this area. Once I started thinking about healthcare, I ended up actually spending a lot of time with some of my network in medical schools and Harvard Medical School and a bunch of other places where I would just basically shadow doctors and see what was going on. And there were a bunch of ideas I came about. Very quickly, I realized that if you want to validate an idea in healthcare, then you should go to the nurses' break room and pitch to the nurses. They will destroy every idea that you ever had and tear it to pieces. And if you can get to a place where some nurse will tell you that this is like a half good idea that he or she might even barely entertain it, you probably have a shot at building a $1 billion company. And so I basically would take all these ideas and sit in these nursing break rooms and have my enthusiasm crushed daily, and got to a place where I was sitting in an exam room watching a doctor. There was a army vet who was there. He had a bunch of comorbidities, diabetes, PTSD, and a bunch of other issues. And the doctor was trying to make sure that we collected his blood pressure, but the person was anxious enough by being in the hospital, so they wanted him to go home and then in a relaxed setup, then collect the blood pressure. So the doctor's putting a sticky on the computer that this has to be done, and then telling the patient, here's my phone number, you call me, while he's also documenting as he's talking to him. There is a nurse in the room, there is an MA in the room, there is a social worker in the room, and the most distracted person in the room is basically the doctor. And so I was looking at it thinking, why does he have to do so much work on tech to actually be able to focus on this patient? And that's when it felt like if we had a digital assistant that could be available to this doctor so that they could just tell it a few things and then encounter would be documented, or prescribe a few things and it would be documented, that could actually be really game changing because the doctor would free up cognitively from looking at the screen. And so that became the genesis of the problem statement that Suki is trying to solve.
Talk about the product offerings a little bit more. We've already discussed them, of course, but Suki set up its technology to be used in one of two ways. Can you talk about the two product offerings?
Sure, absolutely. So, if you think about Suki, the initial plan was that it's a voice-based digital assistant. Think of it like a Siri, but for doctors. You download the app, you can start using it. Now, that's available in many form factors because doctors don't only want to use it on your phone. You may have it on your iOS device or Android device, but you can also log into the web and use it. And then later on, we realized that people want to do long form dictation, which is different from the just intent that the Suki command and control that Suki was doing, but still important. So we added a Windows app to the mix. So now you have all of these form factors in which the assistant can be used. So the doctor can be in office and they can use it this way. They can be walking out, they can use it on the phone. They decide they want to be in a break room and open their computer, they can use it. They want to use it in a mobile machine that's in the office, in their hospital, so they can use the Windows app. No matter how you want it, Suki is available to you. So that was Suki Assistant. Suki Assistant, to build Suki Assistant, we ended up having to build a speech platform. The speech platform contains a speech recognition system, an intent extractor, these natural language parsing setups that power Suki. But over time, some of the most significant healthcare tech companies of our era started showing up and saying, hey, I want to add voice to my system. Can I use the same infrastructure you have to add voice to my system? And now, if your goal in life is to make healthcare tech assistive and invisible, it's not going to only happen because you gave people Suki Assistant. It'll also happen if other technologies started using Suki Speech Platform to add voice to their systems. So, therefore, the goal of Suki is to make healthcare tech assistive and invisible. We have two product lines. One is a Suki digital assistant, which is like a Siri, and the other is Suki Speech Platform, which is the platform that other products use to add voice to their system, both in service of the mission of making the doctor free from all the healthcare tech interfaces so that they can focus on the patient.
Next, like how much of a physician's time can Suki actually save?
It depends, like everything in life. The official marketing number is anywhere from is about 72% of all time on administrative work. The reality is it's anywhere from 25-30% up to 72%. Now, why the difference? The difference is some doctors are more savvy, some doctors are less savvy, some doctors are really awesome at typing, some doctors are painfully, find it very painful to type. Some doctors, if you're a behavioral, doctor, then you probably write like typing these long form novellas on patients. Some, like orthopedics, has just a few things to change. They see the same people again and again. So based on the underlying workflow, speciality, tech savviness of the doctor, the amount of time Suki can save you can vary. But typically, if you give us a sample set of doctors, we expect an average of 50 to 60% decline in all time taken on administrative work. Okay. And then that's time saving. But then there's other things. You save time, you can go home early, or you can see more patients. But more importantly, you can be less frustrated. You can talk casually and get things done. So your satisfaction rating improves. You feel less burnt out. You stay in practice more. Patients feel like the doctors are paying attention to them more. So patients start feeling better. And the data that you're actually extracting out of it, even if, let's say, there was no time saving, the data that extracted out of it is higher quality. This means that the care for the patient is better. This also means that the codes and the nuances extracted from the note is better, which means maybe higher revenue for the doctor or the clinic or the hospital. So there's a lot of positive benefits. Time saving is just one of them.
And it sounds like it would do a lot to combat burnout, which is so cool. Talk about next some of the key challenges faced by Suki and what steps you've taken to overcome those key challenges.
Key challenges. Well, I mean, there are lots of challenges. Every time people ask me, how are you succeeding and why is Suki doing, what it's doing? And I usually tell them, well, with great difficulty. The one challenge that is in general a challenge is just healthcare in general. Now to some extent, the sector is the way it is because it's dealing with human lives. The bar for accuracy and quality is much higher in healthcare than in other places, rightfully so. Data, privacy, security matters a lot. So you have to invest a lot more upfront into the company to build a product, unlike other places, rightfully so. Those things are the right things to do. That's the setup you have to buy into when you build into healthcare. But healthcare is also significantly regulated. Some regulations is appropriate, but some is just, in my opinion, just over quantifying things that can't be quantified. We kind of have done a number on healthcare because if you think about it, let's see what we do to our doctors, right? If you are in, if I did the same to my VP of engineering, I would be telling him, hey man, for every line of code that your team writes, you have to write a comment. and I will judge, how you did based on the comments you wrote, and I'll pay you based on those comments. And if the product breaks, then I will sue you. Okay. Now, the chances that there will be many VP of engineers left after that is very bleak, right? So, so this thing is what we have done to the doctors. Okay, and somehow it's a reality. Yeah, somehow the smart people who are way smarter than me, I'm sure, have decided that we should quantify everything they do, because some way we can quantify a doctor's work, and then we will quantify and we'll pay them, and we will help healthcare get better. All they're really doing is just adding a lot more work for people, and so that problem is just the nature of healthcare as it stands. The other is the immense amount of bureaucracy. There are some very well-meaning people in the administration of healthcare, but for every one doctor, when you have three administration, then it's question to ask is this healthcare, or is it like administrator care or something? The number of people you have to go through to get anything done to the user is just unbelievable. And this actually comes from a surfeit of regulations, high bureaucracy, and just the nature of like the sector we're operating in. So when you pull all these things together, what that does to a company that's starting in healthcare is it creates a significant amount of upfront infrastructure work that will not be paid off, because there is a significant amount of sales cycle to get through to actually start getting revenue. So then how many companies can actually raise money and sit around for like multiple years before the first dollar shows up? Most companies don't do that. So they either build something super small, and that's not ambitious, or they just die and fold. That's the general problem of healthcare tech. Now, in Suki's case, we have to interoperate with the system of records, which is EMRs. And, there's a lot of good things to say about electronic medical records, but I don't think anybody's going to call them cutting edge technology. You are building pipelines into it to put data into it and pull data out of it. The thing that I've learned over the few years that I've done this is that there's actually a really awesome group of well meaning people in these companies. But the infrastructure and the underlying pipelines are so broken that just integrating on top of these is super long, painful, road. But if you don't, then who's going to use you? Because ultimately the data has to show up in the right place in the system of record. And so, big picture, problem number one is just the immense amount of barrier to entry because of all the things you have to check off to actually do healthcare. Problem number two is the bureaucracy and administration and the amount of sales cycles it actually creates. Problem number three is the electronic medical record and the integration work you require. I do think that third one is a solvable problem because there are well-meaning people in these EMR companies, but it's not easy and straightforward. We are kind of like the pioneers who are pulling these pipelines into place. And if you put all of these together, that seems like a pretty significant challenge for any healthcare tech company. And now, mind you, we are a voice product. So you have to be, if you've ever tried to talk to Alexa or Google Assistant or Siri, it's not going to be always precise. You have to like sometimes be pissed off and screaming at it a few times before it gets what it's doing, right? We can't do that. I can't like have a product that's like 98% accurate. If a doctor's seeing a patient and they say, insert my typical clinical, note, I can't not understand what they said or say, oh, tell me what you said again. First of all, they have no time. They don't have any patience. Second, they're dealing with something way more important than working with me. And then finally, I just replace their clunky interface that they were checking boxes with like this, AI that keeps like beeping and saying it doesn't understand. So, that here though ends my rant on all the problems that you can face when you're building this product. Now, the good news is when you actually are on the other side of it, which we are, wow, it's a moat. Because who's going to do what we did? It took some time and some tech to actually put it together. So That's how I would think about it.
Wow, it's just like so much info you're keeping at the top of your head. That was a really good answer. Next, let's look under the hood. Talk about the technology stack and what kind of important choices you had to make early on.
Yeah, I mean, like anything that you build, if you're building a company in any space, really, the first thing you have to do is actually validate that somebody will pay for it. Because you can build any kind of product, you cannot build go to market. Um, Once you have validated that, I think it's best to actually build the simplest possible prototype so that you can start testing with real users. And so we literally used to like ask doctors who are local to just come by our office, and we would have like a really dumb version of Suki in front of them, and they would just talk to it, and effectively we throw up all over it, and then we would learn from that, right? And you iterate in the wild by actually talking to your user continuously. In the early days, we didn't really worry too much about building a speech stack. We just used whatever off the shelf pieces were there. Google Cloud had a bunch of things. We pulled it out from that. And then we just cobbled something together. As time went by, we basically had access to more data, and the problem felt more validated. Then we started actually rebuilding pieces of the product as we went. The tech stack is mostly homegrown. It sits on top of Google Cloud. The intent extractor is Suki's. The speech recognition technology is a combination of many different speech recognition engines. We just plug and play depending upon specialty that we work with. We have a great partner in Envoke. We have something in-house. We have a great partner in Google. We just use all of these things in some variety of ways. The NLP platform is mostly ours. It's a model that's written in-house. The apps are in iOS, Android, and web. There's a Windows native app that is recently taken off and is being used a lot. And we have seen a lot of usage. Amwell did a deal with us where which is this large telehealth company, that every telehealth encounter that happens on Amwell effectively uses Suki. So Suki is embedded within that. Vocera did a deal with us where all the nurse thing where they use the Vocera devices to communicate with each other uses Suki speech platform. So that's another area where we have been working. We have some work that we're doing with Philips also, which we'll announce soon. So those are some examples of how the stack is being used. And of course, Suki Digital Assistant directly is being used by doctors across the country in 100 plus health systems.
Can you talk about what's on your roadmap? I know sometimes that's sensitive, but what kind of exciting things are you working on now, and where are you headed? With the cab that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you this, that like in this space, you end up having to build 3 times the amount of stuff you have to build in any other space to actually build a company. I think I don't look at it as a badge of merit that we built so much. We have had to build so much so that we could actually build a functional company in this space. I wish we had built a lot less, and I wish that we could just keep a narrower focus and actually build it. But the ecosystem deserves effectively what Suki has built is something that there are companies in the prior generation over 20 years who have not put together yet. So that's a lot to build and put together, and then actually serve with the kind of quality that this ecosystem deserves. Now, there are 2 or 3 different arcs on which these roadmaps will evolve. Suki speech platform over time will be more and more widely adopted by more and more companies who want to add voice to their system. So that's just a thing that will happen. Suki Digital Assistant has today 4 skills. Ability to create a note, ability to code, ability to ask questions, show me data, commands, and the ability to dictate anywhere. I expect that over time, more skills will be added. Maybe we will tackle inbox management. Maybe we will tackle, navigation. Maybe we will tackle, other kinds of coding like CPT and things like that, and HCCs. So there'll be a lot of things that doctors spend time on. We'll probably want to take more and more that and add them as skills into the assistant. The other arc is going to be that the assistant is initially was very dictate heavy. Then it became command and control. You could just talk to it and it would understand you. But it'll become over time more and more automated. So you would expect that certain things the assistant would just do without you even talking to it, and just have it there for you so that when you're ready, it's available. So I expect the more and more automated version of assistant to happen. I expect more and more skills to be added. And I expect that the inherent homegrown platform will become smarter and smarter and stronger and more accurate. So those are the arcs on which product development will happen.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And this seems like a good place to wrap up. So before we get out of here, what's the best way for our listeners to reach you and learn more about Suki?
You can go to our website, www.suki.ai, and learn more there. And if the thing that I want to leave you with is the this is a very important problem to solve. There are a lot of super sexy, cool areas around us of tech. I have had the privilege of being in some of them. I'm sure the latest crypto thing is probably exciting. There is fintech. There is all sorts of games. Meta is burning money on their metaverse thing. Like there's all sorts of cool things to work on. But at the end of the day, if you think about one thing that is present in people's life when they're born till when they die is healthcare. And if you make the practice of healthcare better, you're actually making a huge impact on the world. And, if we could even take 1/10 of the energy we put into building games, into building interfaces that are incredibly easy to use for healthcare workers, we could, create a much better world. And so for those who are listening to this, whether it is Suki or it's something else, you decide which companies you like and you think are at the forefront of this. I would advise you or push you to think about healthcare as an area to work in. If you're a technologist, think about it to work in. If you're a financial person, find a way to actually invest in it. If you're a student, then think about adopting it as a career. I would advise you to think about this because this area needs a massive infusion of external talent. And the existing setup technology has not served healthcare well. So I'll leave you with that message. If you want to know more about us, go to suki.ai and we will be very easy to reach from there.
All right, Punit, thank you. It's a great message. It was a great interview. We really love to hear from you again, but this was a treat. Thank you so much, and we'll end it there.
Thank you so much for having me.